Next up is the police department. We have Chief Weiser and Chief Michael here. Answer any questions that you all may have.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of the police department's budget in past years before we get started in this budget. If you look at FY17, FY18, are y'all up on that? Okay. FY18 to 19, you'll see almost a $800,000 increase in the police department's budget. The majority of that was a direct result of a 3% raise that the past administration gave all city employees. And then if you look at FY20, we had a budget of $22,221. So to break our salary, when you look at that budget, you say, well, that's a lot of money. But when you look at that total number, 85% of our budget is salary and benefits. When you go over to that $3,243,968, that is what we're operating the police department on. That's what we're buying gas, that's what we're training, that's what we're paying overtime for, vehicle maintenance, paying the light bills. So we're only operating off 15% of our budget. So the proposal for this year on the FY20 is actually a decrease in the number. 21 is a decrease, I think, in the amount of about 198,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're good with those decreases. I've communicated with the mayor. However, there are some different areas that we would like to pull that money from versus what is proposed. We just don't have any room in that 15% operational budget to make any cuts. I mean, we're utilizing that to run the department. So I mean, what we're looking at to make those cuts, we're looking at cutting 3 civilian positions within the police department, and 2 of those positions are vacant right now, so we wouldn't fill those. But in the last 4 years, we've cut 8 police officers. When I took this position, we were at 231. We're down currently to 224. And we've cut additional 7 civilian positions. So the past administration wanted to give a 3% raise, and they told the police department they had to cut $400,000. I don't have the money to cut $400,000 in that $3 million. In that $3 million, there's $750,000 of overtime for the whole police department, the units, all the divisions. So when you talk about cutting the budget, the only place that we can cut is in salaries, and that's people and that's in positions. Now, we haven't cut any officers off the street. Everything has been administrative positions or civilian positions. And so we had some administrative positions that we were able to cut out of the budget, and it didn't affect calls for service or anything like that. So I just wanted to give you some kind of insight, because people say, well, man, the police department's got a $22 million budget. That's a lot of money. What are they doing with that $22 million? Well, 85% of that's being spent on employees. We got 224 officers, roughly around 40 civilians, and we're operating this on 3.3 million. So when we talk about even cutting 198,000, we can't make it in that 15%. We're going to have to cut it out of salaries and benefits. So that's kind of where we are. We're good with the mayor's number. We're actually reducing our budget by 198,000. We just need to make those cuts in some salary line items. And I'll open it up for any questions.
Chief, not to put you on the spot, but can you talk and kind of inform the council about the training, the crisis intervention, de-escalation, less lethal force training?
Yeah, so I think the mayor posted on the city's website. We posted on the police department website. When you look at capital expenses this year, and I know we're not talking about capital, but some things that we have to maintain when we laid the 5-year plan out for the budget committee, there are certain things that we have to maintain. We've got to maintain a minimum amount of body cameras, and that creates accountability for our officers and our citizens. citizens are less likely, and officers are less likely to, when there's, the video footage is on, that people tend to be some accountability. Tasers, you know, when we purchase tasers, we purchase a 3-year warranty, that covers that taser for 3 years if anything happens to it. But tasers are they're kind of like fleet police cars. They're constantly rolling off their warranty every year, and you know, once the warranty's up and they get damaged, it's cheaper to buy another taser than send it off and get it repaired. But that's less lethal, and we need to utilize all the less lethal and de-escalation techniques that we can use. Our goal is to have every police officer within the police department trained in crisis intervention training, which is a de-escalation, verbal de-escalation. All our personnel have been through fair and just policing. We take classes in ethics and diversity. And, you know, one of the most important things is our relationship with the community. So, you know, we have a good relationship with community. We partner with churches, youth organizations. We try to stay engaged and involved. If I have an issue, or if a councilman has an issue, I know Councilman Dodd and I talk on a weekly basis, not necessarily about crime, but what initiatives are going on in the community that the police department can partner. So, I mean, there's that's just a highlight of some of the things. But we always have to be looking at new technology on less lethal. I think there's some less lethal technology coming out. So, you know, and 3 years ago when we implemented body cameras, 3 years before that, we didn't have any idea that we'd be implementing body cameras. So there's going to be technology developed, you know, over the next year or two that we'll look back and say, well, you know, we didn't have any idea this was available. So, and we try to stay on the cutting edge with technology. We're utilizing the blue light cameras, the police cameras that initially were all purchased off a grant, and were put in high density housing areas where there were a lot of crime. Some of those have been moved out to business districts. We have them all over town now, from Old Hickory to North Highland to Highway 45 bypass. We partnered with the school. The school system got a grant. We helped them build all their police cameras, and we're going to help them monitor those cameras. So we've got a good camera program. When you look at the shot spotter technology, that's some awesome technology, and I know everybody for the most part is familiar with it. And we just incorporated an additional mile to include the hospital area, and the hospital is paying for half of that coverage area. So we have 3 square miles of shot spotter. We've made some significant cases off that technology, and we're currently using some software called Missions, which is a predictive policing software which extracts data from our report management system, and it looks at crimes, it looks at weather, it looks at population, it looks at a lot of things to try to predict crime trends, so we can go in areas where we're having auto burglaries. If we're having a lot of auto burglaries, you know, it will specify the date and time when those have occurred. We also have technology to put up geofencing in a certain area, so if a police car enters that area, we can document when the police car was there, the date and time, and how much we're patrolling somewhere. So, you know, technology is something that is changing daily, and we're trying to keep up with it. We're the first agency in the state of Tennessee to have shot spotter, so we're proud of that. And that's just to mention a few programs. We've got the NIBIN program, which identifies shell casings. It's like a fingerprint on shell casing, on where you compare shell casings from different crime scenes. So, you know, we've got a lot of technology going on. We're going to continue to move that direction. When you look at even before what we're dealing with nationally in our country, before that, there was a decline in recruiting in law enforcement, even prior to this. So, with the challenges of recruiting, we had to rely on technology to help us, make sure that we're policing our community. So we're using that with ShotSpotter and, police cameras and that type technology.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Very briefly, Chief Weiser, how are you this morning?
Good.
Could you just give me an overview, or give this council an overview of policies and procedure when it comes to apprehension of a suspect?
Well, yeah, I can cover that. I mean, first you've got officer presence. Just, you know, you and I talking on a call for service. I mean, there's a force and a presence criteria that we've got to meet. But as long as I've been the chief for over 5 years, we've had one incident where we felt like an officer overstepped his boundaries, and he was terminated. And he filed a civil service hearing, and so they upheld my decision. But anytime an officer uses force, they're required to fill out a use of force form. The patrol captains, Captain Tisdale, Captain Galls, they take each one of those use of force forms, and they pull any video footage that's associated with it, whether it's in-car camera or a body camera, and they review that to make sure that the officer followed, you know, the policy and procedure of the police department along with state law. So we don't have people walking in the front lobby saying that, you know, the police mistreat them. I mean, I'm proud of Jackson. I'm proud of, you know, we've had some protests. They've been lawful protests, and we want to support those. And yeah, I mean, there's things that the police department can do better, and there's things that the community can do better. But we've got to communicate with each other and identify what those priorities are and work on them together to make Jackson better. I can't control what's going on in other states, but we
That
can
is
control.
correct, and we're proud of our police department, and we're proud of the citizens for the peaceful protest for this going around the nation.
Right.
Let me say to you that I'm looking for, and I don't know if we have it, more community relations with respect to the citizens, more citizen involvement. I don't know what citizens group we have with the police department. I'm
Yeah,
unaware.
so we do have a chaplain program, and I've encouraged all our pastors and preachers in all communities to get involved with the police department and the chaplain program, and some have. So, I mean, we're constantly trying to partner with community. We're involved with the Hub Club, the Boys and Girls Club, just a number of youth groups, because I think that's where the difference is gonna be made with our youth. We've implemented the DARE program back, so we teach the DARE program in some of the elementary schools. You know, we try to stay engaged in the community with community cookouts, and we've hired a community outreach coordinator, which is bilingual, which we're you know, that's something that we've never had in the past. So that's opened up some new doors and avenues about communication. So yeah, we all need to step up and do more.
Community-oriented policing.
Well, we're
Is
doing that.
Do we still have it?
Yeah, we're doing that. I mean, every officer in the department has been through community-oriented policing. I mean, that's a model that, you know, that we've been doing under this current administration for years. We're doing community policing, but I want to assure the citizens of this community that we will address crime and criminal activity, and we've done that. You know, less than 2 years ago, there was one of the first ever RICO cases in Jackson, Tennessee, that we partnered with Memphis on, and we indicted and prosecuted some of the most violent individuals and groups within this region. And so we want to do community policing, and we want the community to help us. And what I see out there is our community supports us, and so but we have to address crime too.
Yes.
That's the reality, because
Yes. Yes.
because it was only 8 years ago that you know, the news would report daily that the city was under siege because we were having daily shootings,
Yeah.
gang activity, people getting shot, and we were having weekly briefings. We're not gonna get back to that
Yeah,
point.
but we're not gonna get back to the point of 97 too, if you remember
Chief
that
Wazir,
correctly.
Given, kind of on a similar topic, given the
If,
national, sorry,
Go ahead, I
Oh,
wasn't finished.
I didn't want to cut you off.
Okay. We're proud of the fact that our policemen, I was a strong advocate of it, if you remember, that everybody has cameras on them now. So-
Yeah, and, you know, we've got a challenge, and even before all this, there was a challenge in recruiting, but I'm proud that our department, all the ranks represent our community. And we've got a good relationship, you know, with our city council folks and people in the community, so that goes a long way. One other point I want to cover before I forget, just to kind of give you some insight, in 2019, the Jackson Police Department responded to 120,826 calls for service. So that averaged out to 331 calls a day. In 2018, we answered 121,323 calls for service, which averaged out to 332 calls a day. So
And that's when the
our
citizen
our
calls.
challenge is that we're policing a population at a minimum twice our size any given day. So that's where that 15% is so crucial. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me ask questions. Thank you, Chief Weiser, for other than the budget.
Mr.
so,
Chairman,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
I think Councilman Pretty was
Yeah.
oh,
I was
on
gonna say,
deck.
given, we've gotten, you know, given the national conversation and community policing and the relationship going on, I don't know when this budget necessarily was put together, and I'm sure it's an evolving process, but we have, or I can only speak for myself as a council member, gotten questions from the public of, you know, are we making changes, or how are we redistributing funds? Do you anticipate with what you proposed that there will be any additional redistribution of funds, or is kind of what you proposed to us today, we're pretty much sticking with?
Well, yeah, I mean, so a lot of the initiatives that we do in the community, we do that through fundraisers through the police department, where the police department, they volunteer their time, or we partner with the business community. We've done the Chief Challenge, Andy Bailey 5K. Last year, we did the police experience, and we raised private funds that was not taxpayer money, and that's managed through the West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation. And so, in turn, we sponsored groups like the Boys and Girls Club, Operation Hope, Christmas Programs, Hub Club, Benton Future Leaders of America, Young Life, Boy Scouts, Teen Challenge, Do the Right Thing. So that's just a number of things that we try to stay involved in and try to stay focused in. But
Or I guess more in terms of the operation budget, do we,
what
We
I'm
see
saying,
a
a lot of
shift.
things that we're doing in the community, we're raising the money ourselves. I think there may be $4,000 in there that we call a donation account, and that was something that was only been created for about 2 years. So what we do with the donation account is if we do community cookouts, if there are special events, we will go and carry our grill just to interact and give away hot dogs and hamburgers and try to build relationships. But with that 4,000, we also do Christmas programs for underprivileged kids and do some other initiatives. So what I was getting at with the healthcare foundation account, we're not doing a fundraiser this year. So we're not gonna have the resources to do some of these programs that we've done in the past, because we normally did that in the spring and under the situation, and, you know, it's been a hardship on businesses. I just don't feel comfortable going out and you know, everybody's been through a tough few months here.
sure.
So, could we use more money to do community outreach and those type things? Yes. And can we find the money in that existing 22,025,000? Yes.
I guess I'm just getting at, maybe I'm asking the question on my end, like, that you've got, what you're proposing to us, you feel confident, given the concerns from the community with training or different redistribution of funding, we feel good, we can accomplish the goal with what we've got. There's not additional tweaks that, because of recent events, that you're
Yeah.
entertaining?
No,
Okay.
you know, one of the challenges is, and like I said, we have had lawful and peaceful protests. But as a police chief, I have to be prepared to deal with any situation that may arise.
Sure.
So we've had to spend a lot of money and resources to have those resources available if we did have a bad situation or something happen. So, I mean, that's not money that we anticipated spending, you know, in the last 4 or 5 weeks. But, I mean, we can do it. And another thing, I want you to understand that we're managing our budget. I mean, these are our numbers. These are not Mr. Arnold's numbers, but these are our internal numbers. We're being held accountable at the police department. We work on our budget daily. We've made some significant cuts over the years. I can't control that 3% raise and that increase. That was out of my control. I haven't came to this administration or the prior administration asking for a budget amendment, asking for more money. We're operating within the budget that we have. And so, but the reality is we're operating with that 15%. So, you know, if we make any cuts, it's gotta be personnel. Because if we cut that 15%, then we're gonna start lacking in areas of training, certain equipment that are not capital items. And when you start taking shortcuts, you know, it creates problems.
Speaking of technology and to like a specific item in the budget, can you elaborate on the aviation unit and how we use those funds and how often we, you know, got the helicopter in there and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Deputy Chief Michael address it, because he still flies on a regular basis.
Gotcha.
And the aviation unit falls under his direction.
Okay, thank you.
And we see you.
The aviation unit currently operates with 2 full-time pilots. We also have a part-time mechanic. He's retired from the Memphis Police Department's aviation unit, so we don't have to source out mechanical work. He knows those helicopters from top to bottom, where every one of those little bitty wires goes, and he is currently training our chief pilot, who already has part of his maintenance certification. So we hope to have that pilot trained. Our aviation budget was larger back a few years ago, but there are times, helicopter engines, just like airplane engines, have a time limit on them. And once they time out, they have to be sent off to, we were having to send them off back to the factory to have them basically just rebuilt into almost a new engine. And so just that one cost in our operations budget for aviation was $70-something thousand, $72,000, I think is the last time we paid. But that's been a couple of years ago. We have since had the ability to get more and more parts, and I'm talking, when I say parts, I'm talking about everything from the smallest little piece for a radio to all the way up to an engine, a brand new engine. We've got 2 actually out there now, so we don't have to worry about sending stuff off, but we're getting those through the military surplus program. The helicopter, that's brought down a lot of the cost on our maintenance.
How many helicopters do we have? How many helicopters do we have?
We have,
in the aviation?
if you go out to the hangar, there's 4 out there, but only 2 of them fly.
Okay.
There's 2 of them that are being used for parts. We got those from the military as well. Unlike Memphis purchases all of their helicopters at a cost of $2-3 million apiece. Our helicopters have only cost us what man-hours we put into them, and some things we've done such as painting and things along that line. We try to fly the helicopters every day. As Chief Weiser said, I still fly. I'm not a pilot, but I'm a tactical flight officer, so.
Wait a minute now.
No, I'm not on the side where the controls are. The controls I run, I run the FLIR system. Yeah, so, we're up in the air. We try to fly 2 shifts a day, especially on Wednesday through Saturday, which are our busiest days. That's not always possible, you know. Flying any kind of aircraft is relevant to the weather, for one thing. But the benefits to that are that helicopter, most of the time, is actually the first unit on the scene. And just a few weeks ago, I was flying. They put out a burglary in progress call. We were close by. I saw the person coming around from the back of the house and was able to warn the officers that were arriving on the scene that somebody was there. So it's a safety issue there. For citizens, when there's a pursuit, the helicopter can take over, and patrol cars can back off, decreasing the likelihood of a traffic crash. Because we're kind of, I like to kind of consider us the premier agency in West Tennessee. A lot of agencies call for our help. We have the only bomb unit outside of Memphis in West Tennessee. We have the only aviation unit except for THP. They have one housed up in Henry County. They do not get to fly as much as we do, but they do have a helicopter. But one of the things that sticks out in my mind, if you remember a little while back, the man killed the correctional officer down in Henning and escaped from the prison. We knew, or we had good intel. The person that had him put in prison was here and worked here in the downtown area. So we fully expected him to be headed this way. We got called for air support down there, and our helicopter, along with the THP's helicopter, when they narrowed it down to several acres of woods, they hovered over the tree lines so low that it blew up so much dust he had to come out. And we were able to take him into custody without him doing any further killing. We also, a couple of weeks later, were involved in capturing a fugitive from DeSoto County, Mississippi. So,
I guess ultimately,
What, have you got a specific line item or something you'd like to address?
no, I'm just
Councilman
curious
Freeman?
on just with, as we talk about instituting new technologies, and
Yeah,
I'm learning about the aviation unit.
Right.
Thanks for the information. I guess the question begs, have we looked into other technologies, whether that's drones?
Yeah,
And is
so-
that efficient
yeah,
compared
no,
to?
I'm
so-
not prompting these questions, I promise.
yeah, I hear you.
the drone,
Well, I guess and that's why I asked how often, and you mentioned it goes up every day or every other day, but how often is it needed on a service call or in a pursuit?
Well, a drone application requires a search warrant unless it's, and I'll let Barry cover that, but it's crazy where you can use a helicopter if you were going to look at a location that was possibly growing marijuana. You can do it with a helicopter, but if you use a drone application specifically for that, you have to apply.
it's illegal.
It's illegal. There's some open field acts and crop stuff, public safety stuff like after shooter type situation. There are some exceptions. But then you get into, you know, and I don't know a whole lot about drones. We do have some drones at the police department. And they utilize them for different applications as far as working crime scenes, cover for K-9 officers in a rural setting that are trying to apprehend violent armed offenders. So but,
So there's some instances you need the helicopter versus
yeah,
what you can do legally with a drone.
right.
There, the limitations on drones,
Yes.
they're good tools for taking overhead photographs of crime scenes. They're great tools. But the limitations is your field of view for a drone is only where the operator has that camera pointed. When you're up there at 1,000 feet in the helicopter, you can see all the way around. Now, we have a very powerful camera in that helicopter, and we can record stuff that's on the ground. But Councilman Pickens, I know he's a pilot, and, there's just so much more you can see when you're up there as opposed to when you're operating a single camera and trying to use a drone to pick out a spot. It's apples and oranges, really. The helicopter the drone has its purpose. I agree with that, but the helicopter can do so much more. When you're looking for an Alzheimer's patient that has walked off on a 100-degree day, we can see, unless the drone knows exactly where to look, they're gonna just have to be constantly scanning the area, whereas we can pick those out a whole lot easier from the air because we've got a set of eyes that can see virtually 180 degrees.
So, and I would add, anytime that we have special events, major events, that the helicopter plays a vital role, along with responding to calls from service. I mean, we've got a large area north of I-40 that has, experienced, well, not even north of I-40, but south, that experienced a lot of construction. And so that's the reason why we put a north precinct out there. But, the helicopter's able to respond. We even have a K-9 application where if we had an after-shooter type situation, that we had to deploy a K-9 to apprehend somebody. So we use it for a number of situations.
I don't want to interrupt and cut you off short, but I hope you'll continue to keep a close eye on this aviation unit and develop it, improve it, do what we need to do with it because it is a major asset. So let's just keep up the good work with that.
This mechanic we've got right now from Memphis is top-notch, and both of our pilots are, they're really, really good.
I think one of your pilots came out of the Marine Corps, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you ought to be
that's
proud of
correct.
that, Chief.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
But I spent some time in the military as a helicopter crew chief and also as a military pilot, so I can understand what you're talking about when it comes to a helicopter. So,
Well,
just keep it up.
Right, and we're trying to do everything to minimize the cost with the aviation unit. That's something that the mayor wanted me specifically to look at, and that's something that we're going to continue to try to cut the cost, utilizing our own mechanic and getting that equipment and stuff through the government programs that doesn't cost us any money. I would add, one other thing I would add, we did just get $138,000 COVID grant. Money just came in, and we just applied for a $1 million equipment grant, which you couldn't apply for police cars, but other equipment in there. So hopefully we'll know about it shortly, but we're continuing to try to apply for grants.
I'll point out one more thing too. That mechanic that we got, he's the same mechanic that's been working on our helicopters for probably 10 years now. Even back when he still worked for Memphis, he worked part-time for a company out of Nashville. I don't remember the name of the company now. We hadn't used them in a while. But they were the ones doing our maintenance for us. So when we needed something done on a helicopter, they would call him. We were paying them $82 an hour, and he was only getting 35 of that. So he said, look, I'll come to work directly for y'all. And we hired him. And so we don't even have to go through that third-party company anymore, and we cut our maintenance cost in half doing that.
I believe there's a federal grant, too, that helps you get some of the needed parts for your.
It's military, it's all under the military surplus program.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Which is a big savings.
Right, big savings.
Chief Weiser, quick question. The school resource officers, we didn't spend much on it last year. Don't have anything budgeted for that this year. What's the status of that program, please?
Yeah, so, the sheriff's department maintains, all the school resource officers. That's a county function now. Our last two school resource officers, were at the alternative school. And back a couple years ago when we were making those budget cuts, we needed those positions to come work the street. And, so they have now hired, private security to work the alternative schools. So, and you'll see there's several areas when you go through the budget, like crime analysis, community correct, I'll have to flip through here, but you'll see there's several, areas that's been cut out completely. Crime prevention, and we've moved, trying to save money in years past. So, we don't currently have any school resource officers. However, we do try to coordinate with the schools and go in and do walkthroughs. Captain Tisdale, is, involved in some programs with the school. And like I said, we do have, a DARE officer, that's not his primary assignment, but, he works in a couple of the elementary schools.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wanted to start by saying you all are just doing a fantastic job and really have a good reputation.
Thank
And
you.
I want to back up what Councilman
you.
Buchanan said, that the rallies and the walk, that was really nice.
Well, thank you.
My question is, I just want to clarify with the amount of money and training that we put into new officers, do you all feel comfortable with the budget that you have to retain the officers? And are we in line with outlying areas that could be considered close to? I just
Yeah.
wanted, I just
I
want to
promise,
make sure, yes
I
or
promise
no,
I have not
clarify.
talked to Councilwoman Wallace.
No.
But the problem is when I come up here, when we come up here, I have to be prepared for whatever.
Well, it has been something that's
Yeah.
been on my mind, and
Yeah.
I think when you can keep officers and you've trained them, in the long run, you're spending your dollars wisely than retraining and
Right.
starting over.
Yeah,
So that was the
and
intent of my question.
if you'll look at the training budget line item, that is something that we've created over years past. And we have, I just wanted, I didn't have time to do, I know we are underpaid compared to other agencies our size. And just to give you some kind of insight, this is a pay chart of the Tennessee Highway Patrol. And, we have a 10-year, if you look at that pay chart, if you look at lieutenant, yearly step at 10, a lieutenant with the Highway Patrol is making more than a police chief in the city of Jackson. If you look at a top-out trooper, is, I guess that's with 10 years, is making $62,000. That's substantially more than what our police officers top out. So I'm not one to, I'm not really concerned about my position, but as far as retaining our officers, we need to get up in a competitive pay scale, because what we're seeing is we have officers, and I encourage officers to continue down the career field and do whatever they can to better themselves. And if they want to go to work for the ATF or the U.S. Marshal Service or the FBI, I want them to be successful. But the problem is we're not being able to retain because of our pay situation. Now, that's not something, I understand and I get the financial position that city's in, so, I mean, that's not something that I'm gonna bring to you, but that's something that needs to be addressed, because it's a real issue. We lose officers every year to state and federal agencies, and we're fixing to lose 2 to the U.S. Marshal. It's just something that when you look at recruiting and you look at the pay, I mean, who wants to come and do this profession, what we're dealing with the amount of money that we're making?
Yeah, it does concern me that we're trying to retain officers, we're
Right.
trying to give them this great training, but we're training them for other areas.
Right.
When we talk about recruiting, I can look back, I don't wanna go back to when I started. I'm like the most senior person on the department now, so, but going back years, my point is, we would have a turnout of 200 people easy to take the police civil service exam. And now we're lucky if we get 40.
Yeah.
And when we get 40 people that turn out for the exam, we end up with a pool of maybe 8 or 9 people to pick from. And we've got 15 open slots right now. So that's the trouble we run into. And these people are looking at higher paying jobs.
Well,
And I think it may be where, you know, we really have to, look at the reality here. So ever since I've been the police chief, we've operated at a minimum of 10 officers short. That's just reality. So, and that's a number that doesn't really put us in a real bad situation. So, do we take those 10 positions, that money, and do we invest it back into our officers and training and pay to get us where we need to be so we can retain the officers that we got without even increasing the budget? I think that's something that's doable.
Good. Hopefully with us knowing that and maybe looking at maybe developing a 5-year plan and working in with the finance committee. But I think it was just important for us to be aware of that,
Yeah.
that the areas that we're compared to, that were a lot lower, and I think that we would be better off retaining. So hopefully we can move towards that and maybe make a plan to help achieve that. Thank you.
Chief,
Go ahead, John.
I know we've discussed some things about training, and you say you have enough money in your budget, but I want to make sure that based on things that's going on around the country, as far as diversity training, and then also you look at our mental health with, a lot of people that y'all not trained really to deal with. that you have to deal with.
And that's what I referred to earlier. I'm not sure if you were in here, Councilman Dodd, but the crisis intervention training.
Yeah.
That's specifically for dealing with mental illness. I don't have the number with me. The fire chief can give it to you, but there is, and he'll be able to tell you when he gets up here, but I want to say there's 53, maybe 53 group homes that are housing, folks with mental illness. And so who do they call when they won't take their medicine or they're having trouble with their sitter? They call us. So, that training is crucial in de-escalation and communication and, trying to make folks feel comfortable in those type situations. But those are calls that we're answering every day. Every day.
Well, please let us know, because we need to make sure, calls like that, we want to make sure we can get a crisis team or just somebody's on standby, always be on call that can meet you all out there to make sure, we don't put y'all in harm's way, that create a problem that don't need to happen.
Right.
And, thank you for the relationship. Like I said, you are in the community. You have your officers always out in the community doing things, so thank you all for continuing. But let's continue to build that relationship and kind of prevent some things, because I am proud of, I said, we don't have some of the issues we have in other cities, but we need to make sure we maintain it and prevent it so we won't get there.
Agree.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I would echo Councilman Dodd's sentiments. Crisis intervention percentage, what, with our patrol officers, how many have gone through that training?
We're probably at about 70%.
Do we have, I know in some cities and larger municipalities, they have a crisis team that's very trained in dealing with mental health intervention. Do we have a specified team, or is this kind of a broad stroke across the department?
No, it's just a broad, I think the training, it's intensive training, it lasts for a week.
Okay.
So, it's not like an 8-hour training, it's a whole week course, and there's role playing in there, and, it's a really good recognized course throughout the state of Tennessee and Southeast.
I think one of the, what you're addressing, Councilman Taylor, I teach this in one of the college classes I teach, the crisis intervention training, some agencies use teams. And some agencies like us, and a lot of agencies around West Tennessee, train all of their officers or try to get to that point. But the training, my understanding, is the same.
Okay.
So, we try to have a CIT trained person on, we got several on every shift, try to get them, you know, where they're on every call. So, and like he said, it's a week-long school. We normally would have had a group of 20 or 25 going through in the spring, but of course, that didn't materialize this year. So hopefully we'll get some through in the fall. And, you know, we're gradually working to get them all, like he said, getting them all trained. And then they'll all have the same training that the teams you're talking about have.
I think that's very important. I mean,
It is.
for the untrained officer, there's a potential to exacerbate the issue if they don't have that knowledge going into the situation.
Yeah, I mean, and there's communication things that you can do to immediately make somebody in that situation feel comfortable or
Exactly.
de-escalate it. And, yeah, training's a key on that.
My son was recently hired with us, well, it's been almost 2 years ago now, but he told me that they do give a little bit of that at the police academy, but it's not anywhere near what this week-long school can provide. So we need to stick with that and not just rely on what the academy does.
In terms of in-car cameras, we got 100% in patrol cars.
Yes.
Body cameras, where are we at presently for patrol officers?
Well, uniform officers on the street is at 100%.
100%.
So, yeah, so, and I know this is not a capital hearing, but we've got to maintain, when we put the 5-year capital outlay, we put the minimum in there to maintain the programs that we have. I think there's 8 or 10 tasers in there. There's 10 body cameras. There's 5 police cars. I mean, the current situation that we're in right now, we are putting motors in police cars that have 120,000 miles on it. Now, that's probably not the best business decision that we can do, but the problem is you know, we can't get police cars right now because of COVID, and we're still waiting on the 5 that we got approved for last year's budget. But when you look at the 5 police cars, when you look at the minimum amount of tasers, that's just to maintain the current programs that we've got. And so that's kind of where we're at.
City court, how much resources do you guys dedicate to city court transport?
Yeah, so if you look at the warrants,
Okay.
if you look at the warrants line item, that whole line item, those folks, that's all they do is work city court.
$440,000.
Right.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources going into city court.
Yeah. In terms of looking at the salary and payroll benefit spreadsheet, and I know you probably don't have this in front of you, and maybe it's a quick answer. For the gang unit, there's some duplicated employee numbers. And I'm assuming those, I'm just gonna kind of make a general assumption that those may be unfilled positions.
Yeah, they're, and those vacancies that the chief referred to, some of those are in the gang unit, some are in narcotics, some are in the patrol division.
Are they duplicated employee numbers or names?
Well, we were provided the information with the names removed, but their employee numbers are duplicated in a number of different instances. And one of those would be if you looked at police gang unit, there's a police officer 3, well, 2 different police officer 3s that have duplicated numbers.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. I mean, all we've got is just their line items. So I'll have to look into that and see if there's some duplicated.
Okay.
If there are vacancies, I imagine they're placeholders.
Sir?
If there are vacancies in those spots, I imagine they're placeholders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. You know, to echo what a number have said, I think you guys do an excellent job in maintaining your budget. You know, I think you should be commended on that year in and year out. You know, I think you, again, your department has really kind of led the way in looking out into 5-year plans to be able to get the capital needs that you need, not only to keep the community safe, but to keep people accountable with body cameras and other things, both on the civilian side and on the police side. So I'd commend both of you for the excellent job you've done in maintaining the budget and your interaction with the community over the last month or so.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, if I could, Mayor, if I can know it's might not be the right time, but if we could make a recommendation as far as looking at developing that crisis team, that could be able to help, you know, if ever needed, and going out on call when you have issues dealing with mental health or any issues like that, it would be great to have a crisis team on standby if needed to help out with issues like that.
Okay, yeah, we'll look into it. Well, I mean, we'll take all the help we can get, so, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, we got a relationship with Pathways, a lot of things we can
Right.
talk to some people like that. We're kind of, West Tennessee Healthcare, develop a relationship with them, and have somebody on standby would be great.
And I'm gonna be quick, Mayor. But I don't wanna put too much on you, and I don't wanna come up here and be complaining. But I want you to recognize that what we're dealing with. We work out of a building that was built in the early 1970s. We currently have a heater and chiller system that we have employees that run space heaters year-round in our building. My vents are taped off in my office due to the amount of mold and stuff that I can't pronounce that's in the duct system. The water is sometimes brown when it comes out. So,
It's to help build your immune system, Chief.
I know. So, the building floods at least once a year through the walls. We've had to take everything that's downstairs as far as evidence and build everything up off the walls, off the floors. So we've got challenges. I know financial challenges with the city, but, you know, I've never been the one to come over here and complain about anything, but the current status that we're working in is just really not a good environment. And as far as the improvements and the investments that we've done over there, that was all done through federal equitable sharing money. It was not taxpayer money because we didn't have the money to paint the building. We didn't have the money to put up vinyl fence. We didn't have the money to replace full floors in the police department. So we did that with federal equitable sharing. But that's something at some point down the road that the council is going to have to take a look at.
So you're saying you need a new building?
Well, I think when you talk about mold, you're talking another issue that we could be held responsible for too. So I just want to say, I think that's very serious.
Chief, have y'all done any mold testing, like you mentioned your vent?
Yeah, they came and tested the ductwork. I think it's been
Been several years.
it's been a few years ago. We can have that done again, and, but, what are we gonna do? We gotta work there.
Right.
We've tried to get the ductwork clean. I spent the majority of my career working special operations, so I worked in an off-site location. I never took a sick day till I started working in this building over here, because it creates allergy and sinus issues. You can go in one office, it's in the, it's 58 degrees, and you can go in another office, and it's 80 degrees. It's just what we're having to deal with. So I wanted to make you guys aware of that. So maybe that's something that we can look out down the road, and we'll be looking at some grants, try to
The
Try to
grant
get a
that you
place built.
mentioned earlier, is that already pinpointed for a specific area? I know you had the COVID one, but you're
Yeah,
still
so-
hoping.
Yeah, so with the $1 million grant, what is in that grant that we applied for was some additional shot spotter areas.
Okay.
We also, there's some additional blue light cameras, but we also put some mobile police cameras. I don't know if you've ever maybe been to Memphis, some of those areas, they have a mobile police cameras. It's got blue lights on them, that's got a telescope that shoots a camera up. We wanted to get some of those so we could utilize them in our business shopping areas along with sportsplex. You know, it's a remote camera that we can view in central dispatch and at police headquarters. What else is in there, Barry? What else was in there?
Mr. Chairman, to speak to the chief's request, I think this goes back to the prioritization of what we're spending capital dollars on. Currently, we're about to open a city court that's, per this budget, $1.1 million in the black, or in the red. So we need to start prioritizing what we're spending our money on, and if we have things that are dead weight and that aren't really pulling their weight and being net zero like they need to be, we need to consider some significant changes in that area.
It's a safety
The
concern.
grant you're referring to is, the $1 million grant is community crime reduction. So it all has to go towards crime reduction
Right,
initiatives.
right. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks, Chiefs.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we will, have the fire department. Chief Samuels, Chief Riddle.
Good morning, Mayor and council members.
Good morning. Morning.
I want to get started by just saying that public safety is a labor-intensive service model. Our operating budget typically reflects about 87% in salaries. 8% is usually fixed costs such as apparatus parts, repairs, fuel, hose, equipment, station supplies, and station maintenance. So ultimately, we're left with about 5% and sometimes less to use for discretionary spending capacity. And that typically covers unexpected expenses. Therefore, incremental cuts of only 1% or 2% can have a significant impact on the department's ability to maintain services because discretionary spending is so limited. So in other words, we may not have sometimes that cushion to insulate ourselves without impacting personnel and or service delivery. We understand that through the elected officials' lenses, the pressures of fiscal stewardship, capped revenue, debt services, general fund balance, and rising personnel costs such as overtime can place an increased expectation on the fire chief and the department to do more with less. The Jackson Fire Department will find a way to remain efficient. We will strike a balance between the national standard requirements that we are bound by while maintaining the life safety needs of the community, given the resources that are available. We'll entertain questions at this time.
You feel like your current budget that you've proposed will get you through the next year? I know there's several challenges with fire apparatus and possibly new fire stations at some point down the road, but do you feel like this next year will get you through in good shape?
Yes, we believe with the cuts that we have provided that we will be able to maintain the services that we can render to the citizens.
Chief Samuels, I know at one point with the equipment, especially the vehicles, we were playing catch-up to be in code with, I guess either state or federal law on our years of usage. Have we been able to bridge that gap? And if not, are we addressing that in this current budget proposal?
Talk about that.
Yep, well, what we've been in talks with Mayor Conger about, and also Budget Committee, I've sent some information over regarding apparatus lease purchase program. What that will do is that will allow us to actually purchase the equipment and pay for it over a period of 10 years. In doing so, we've looked at, and there's several options of the way that you can purchase a fire truck. You can purchase what they call a custom-made fire truck, where they actually build it for you, or you can buy one just as if you were to go to a Ford car dealership and get one off the lot that still meets our needs. So the ones that we're looking at are already pre-built, so there's a significant savings there. And we're trying to locate the money now in order to meet that yearly payment. But if we were successful in this lease purchase and be able to come up with the funding, which is roughly around $587,000 a year, so that's actually about the price of one fire truck. We could actually get 7 pieces of apparatus in here, probably within by the end of the year this year. So it's something that we really firmly believe in. If you look at what I put up here, the boxes that are in red are actually our engines that and our apparatus that are over 15 years old. So National Fire Protection Association establishes a 15-year life cycle for our fire apparatus, and we have 3 of them that are 28 years old on the road currently, with well over, one of them's got 187,000 miles on it. And so we got very high mileage on our fire trucks. Our garage and our shop is doing the best that they can to help us, but last year we spent $381,000 in maintenance, vehicle maintenance alone. And so and this year we're projected to be over 400,000. So part of the benefit of looking at the lease purchase program is to stop the bleeding. So we're spending good money after bad currently on maintenance. So could we not put that money towards new fire apparatus and save on that maintenance cost is the entire thought process. There's a lot of moving parts that go into it. We have been looking at this program and again, talking with the mayor, Mr. Arnold as well, Susan White, in order to make several of these areas work. But that is a concern of ours.
And we're confident that with this lease purchase program and looking at the rise in maintenance costs that we have of about 400, probably going over 400,000, that we could save over 50% of that, probably 200, almost $300,000 just in the maintenance cost to go toward that $500,000 cost.
So the proposal with the estimated savings and the cost of lease would be a net increase to the city of $300,000. Is that what I'm hearing? A $200,000 savings for
From maintenance costs, yeah, just deleting those maintenance costs. We're looking at least 2 pieces of equipment that's 28 years old. The National Fire Protection Agency says after 25 years.
It's supposed to be retired.
So what we're looking at is making sure that we can fund this out of the proper channels and it doesn't add to our debt.
Right.
And
Correct.
so once we get that figured out, then we'll be ready to move on this. So you look at also, Chief, you can talk about the other saving measure you're doing from the tanker. And then,
Yes,
yeah.
and Chief Frillo can speak to that. We have devised a plan to eliminate Tanker 7. Originally, when Station 7 was purchased and built, there was a lack of water supply in the area. Since then, there has been sufficient hydrants in the area, so now we don't have that critical need of Tanker 7 to operate out of Station 7. And you came up with the plan to close Tanker 7.
Yes, so what that would entail would be moving Tanker 7 to what is now considered Fire Station 3 on F.E. Wright Drive, and taking that staffing from Tanker 7 and reallocating those and absorbing those into spots that we currently have open. Overall, by looking looking at putting tanker 7 into more of a reserve status, just we'll use it as needed rather than having it staffed 24/7. We're looking at roughly about a savings to the city of 300,000, from salaries to maintenance costs to overtime, to fill those positions when they're off. So when we evaluated that apparatus, how many runs that it was going on, it was costing us a pretty good bit of money just to make it on one incident, well over $500. So cost factor wise, we feel like that is a good move for the city. It's a savings for us. And plus that tanker will still be in service as needed. One of the personnel from Engine 32 or wherever it's located will get off of that truck and respond in it.
Where was Tanker 7 located?
Tanker 7 is currently located on Windy City Road at Station 7.
And we still have enough good coverage there, you feel comfortable?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
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 Doug, isn't all that with the, so what we're looking at on the replacement of those apparatus were the maintenance cost on the existing apparatus, on how much that costs, and then the retirement of whatever the term is for tanker 7, then that'll save us enough money to offset the cost of the payment every year for the new truck. So that's what we're looking at now, and how we can utilize those dollars to make that happen.
Mr. Chairman, while staying with this leasing plan, what happens at the end of this lease? Is there an option to purchase? Do we plan to pursue that?
Yes, so the way that the lease purchase works is it very similar to financing a car. So we go through 10 years of payments, and at the end, we buy the vehicle for $1.
And Chief Brittle has graciously agreed to
Yeah.
use his own money for that.
I've agreed to do that.
Thank you.
But that's the way that it works. My understanding, and Mr. Arnold was talking with the, he's more into the financial aspect, but this lease will actually renew every year, and therefore we're not putting it as a burden on future years. If you ever, we got into a point where we needed to opt out of it, which I would think that we would never get there, but there is that potential that you could do that.
Mr. Chairman, does that component, speaking to Mr. Arnold, does that component, the annual renewal, would that remove it from our debt service requirement?
Yeah.
I mean, debt service classification, excuse me.
Because not future obligations.
Right.
The way I looked at the lease a couple of times, and Chief Riddle described it accurately there. I believe the way it works is the first year you commit to the first year's lease payment. There's no out, right? Beginning with the second, and you make a commitment that it's our intent to fulfill, if it's a 10-year lease, the other 9 years, or a 7-year lease, the other 6. It's our intent. It's our intent to do that. But as it's described, there is an option that if we're in a situation where, for whatever reason, we're unable or elect not to continue the lease, we just give the equipment back at our cost, and it's over. So that's, in essence, is that a fair?
Yes.
That's my understanding of my memory of how it works, so.
So if I'm tracking correctly, with the savings that you'd realize from the relief and maintenance and from the reorganization of the tanker truck, that could almost pay for the lease of the new equipment?
That is correct.
Okay. What's the delay in kind of moving forward or proposing this? Is this something that?
Trying to get
Well-
the details figured out.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the details that's been discussed the last 5 minutes on, tying the savings down exactly,
And then we had to
and
go
then,
through
and,
joining the co-op as well, so we had
Yeah,
to join that too.
HGAC
Yeah.
co-op.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But potentially, we could make the changes to this fiscal year in a timely manner to get that scenario set up, or is that more of a delay?
That's our anticipation.
Yeah.
And not suggesting that this would run into any hurdles with the comptroller's office. Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they've done this all over the country, but there would be a process required for comptroller approval, because they view this as a capital lease, and that's viewed to be new debt.
There are about 80 cities and nonprofits in Tennessee that are using the HVAC consortium.
The only other, consideration, could be, as you know, with the capital lease, it's as described by Chief Riddle, it's a finance plan, right? So it's just a question of, is this plan of finance, would that be the best plan of finance versus going out and seeking your own financing to do it? So, there's an interest rate. They shared the rates at the time we looked at the proposal, but as you know, rates are changed daily. So, there would be a question we would want to ask. Okay, we need this equipment, we're going to get this equipment, but what is the best plan to finance the equipment? And this may very well be it, but we would want to evaluate that.
But what is before us now to consider does not
No, this
include
is
that
not,
scenario.
this is just,
Okay.
we're just, yeah, that was just
Right.
a conversation of what they were planning with their apparatus.
So,
The actual the first payment on this, if we went to this plan, wouldn't be till FY '22 anyway, so they were just updating on the apparatus.
just, well, I'm gonna speed this up pretty quick, but I wanna just take a few minutes to brag on our firefighters and what they're doing, because they're really going above and beyond. And one thing that we are doing is we're actually cleaning house from within. We are looking at a program which is considered an adoptive fire station. It's called the Adoptive Fire Station, where we partner with community partners in order to make improvements to our fire station. As Chief Samuels alluded, we have a very small amount of money to do that. Our firefighters are stepping up, making these improvements. They're painting, they're doing their landscaping, just on and on what they're doing. But they're doing this right now without the use of any funding from the city. And one of our captains actually owns a business, and he sponsored a project out at Station 5. And they were able to get that project done. Looks fantastic, with zero tax dollars. So we're very proud of what our guys are doing and the initiatives that they're willing to take. One thing that we're also doing is we're being very conservative with our spending of our money. So if we are allowed and do find a way to replace the current apparatus, what we had talked with the mayor about is selling that equipment rather than keeping it on our books, and then reallocating those funds back into a firefighter safety account, which will allow us to purchase a new set of turnout gear for all of our firefighters with no additional costs to the taxpayers. So just by doing some creative, looking at the budget and coming up with creative ways, we're able to meet our objectives and to keep our firefighters safe by some of the things that we're able to do in-house. And but it's not a one or a two-man show. We got a great fire department, and we're proud of every one of our members.
I'd like to thank Chief Samuel and your group, because y'all are building relationships in the community. See y'all out in the community a lot at different events, so I think it's great to build a relationship with our people in the community.
Well,
So,
thank you. And
thank
we
you all for doing
appreciate
that.
And with the addition of Chief Riddle as the deputy chief, I think that we are a complete package, and we have best interests of the fire department and the citizenry in mind.
And the lease suggestion is really a win-win. That sounds really, really good.
Thank you.
Very much so.
Thank you, Chief Riddle, for your, you came in, I could tell right from the get-go, you were serious about taking care of some of the delinquencies that we've had on repairing and replacing some of these the equipment. And I think that's something that we identified early on last year, but I've seen you really take the bull by the horns on that, so I would commend you on the work that you've done in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions for chiefs?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Central Dispatch.
would love to start with a story for you, but I think you've heard quite a lot today. So therefore, I'd just like to say that I have been a dispatcher for the last 35 years.
Yes, you have.
And the director of Jackson Central Dispatch for the past 10 years. I've trained some of those folks in dispatch. Some of them are very new, and we're doing some retraining, but we have wonderful staff over there. I'd like to add that we are short 3 right now. Hopefully, after we get the determination that the hiring freeze is over with, that I can get those positions filled, because they definitely do not need to go away. I work in conjunction, our department works in conjunction with both the fire department and the police department, so it's nice to go last between those two instead of in the middle, because I'm always in the middle. So therefore, they've already given you a lowdown of the buildings, which we're all wanting a building, and I know I've already submitted that to you because I get reminded all the time of the $5.4 million wish list for the next 5 years. But that is something that our department really needs as well. Where we're at right now is not very safe, considering we work 24/7, 365, and we're in and out of the front door of the building. Cameras are great, but if you can't get a hold of anyone at the time that it occurs, then it doesn't it doesn't help with employees going in and out. If you've got a foot pedal, which is a radio pedal, it comes in handy because any of the police department or CID, drug task force, any of them can around that corner within 2 seconds or 2.3 seconds, and whoever's bothering us at the Central Dispatch Center, they can take care of it. We've seen it happen on the camera. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you all, and if you have any questions, I'll try my very best to answer them for you.
Mr. Chairman, you spoke about 3 vacant positions
Yes,
that you
sir.
have presently. Are those included in this budget?
Yes.
Okay. Also, and you'll have to refresh my memory here, about your needs. I haven't seen the capital request worksheet. It's been almost a year now, on your needs for a new central dispatch facility. And maybe we save that. I don't know if we're gonna have another.
Don't get her started on that.
I know, but I think it's
I'll keep it
important to,
very
again,
short.
stay on the
Yeah.
horse that I've been on, is that we need to prioritize what we're spending our money on.
Okay, our Central Dispatch Center dispatches not only for the city fire and city police, but we have a new digital radio system that I might add at $4.3 million. Some of you were on the council when we got that, and we got that due to Mother Nature and a lot of prayer of lightning strikes, which I succeeded in getting. So we were able to get a new radio system, digital P25 system, which is very much needed as well, because the grants would not be allowed if we did not have a digital system as far as public safety, law enforcement, and fire are concerned, because that was one of the things that they require, is that the agency has a digital system. So we've got that. The thing is, we're in a building that is leased by the city. It's not even owned by the city. It's about 5,500 square feet. It has a tin roof. The tin roof leaks. We're very fortunate the console furniture that we use and some of the computers that we use, that the 911 center or the 911 emergency board furnished those for us to the tune of about $879,000. So when it rains, it leaks, and we have trash cans sitting on top of the consoles to catch the rain. Because of the ductwork underneath the tin roof, because it also has an water apparatus system on the roof, it caught on fire, the rain does not go in the filtering system, the drainage system, as quick as it should, and it splatters out. So the reason that I submitted the $5.4 million for the budget, for the capital budget for a new building, is that a communication center, we're the primary source communication center for the city of Jackson. If that was in the same building as the police department or in the same building as a fire department, and God forbid something happened to those departments, whether they got hit by lightning, whether they got hit by a bomb, whether they got hit by terrorists, whatever, you're still depleting your whole communications center as well, because they're located within that building. Most of the communication centers that are large, like our entity agency, are separated from their actual law enforcement or fire entity. They're located in another jurisdiction of the city. A lot of them have bunkers. We've looked into the bunker. I've looked into that, and that's where the $5.4 million comes from. It's sort of a bunker style like JEA has. If you can get JEA to move, we would be glad to move in their bunker. But that's the reasoning for that, is that we can have a secure location that not only the dispatchers be able to walk in and out of and feel safe of walking in and out of, but be able to perform their duties when there is a tornado, when there is a hurricane, because we've already experienced that, or any type of terrorist threat to the department. They would be secure and they would be safe, and the communications would be, unless the whole entire city failed.
Mr. Chairman, so we're leasing the current location
Yes, sir.
and the roof is leaking.
Sometimes, not all the time.
Sometimes.
It depends on how hard it rains.
What about the building owner? Do they not have any responsibility to repair that roof?
When we signed the lease agreement before the last administration, it was the responsibility that I took care of the building.
Okay.
So therefore, to the tune of about $21,000, I have paid out since being in that building since 2014. They have a new heating system, and it has 6 air units. So I've replaced all of those. So, yeah, we're spending money there too on a building that the city does not own.
And what's the duration of that lease?
Yep, 10 years. We just signed it again for I think we have 7 more years, because they signed, prior administration signed it without my knowledge.
What's the expense on the lease expense? I don't see it.
I don't think there's a fee.
It doesn't come out of your budget?
No, sir. If it
Okay.
is, it's $1.
Okay.
It's $1 that just like the same building we were in before we moved to that building at 60 Auditorium above the Ambulance Authority, it was like $1 a year. Because
Your-
that was not our building.
Your line item maintenance contracts, what does that cover?
That covers the radio system.
Okay.
When we incorporated the radio system, the P25 digital system, we signed a lease agreement with them that for the next 4 years, Motorola would come in and take care of the whole entire radio system. And we just got done having a major upgrade for the radio system already. So those are maintenance agreements that we did sign a lease for 4 years only with them. And they don't really do a very good due diligence of sending the bills on time, because that's thrown my line item to go over, because they'll send me, I just got a bill from them for 2018 for $34,825.34 this year. So needless to say, I've already put Motorola on the carpet, and I've got waiting for answers from corporate and also our liaison Motorola representative from Nashville to look into that as to why they're not staying targeted on sending those in the budget period time. Because I am going to be over that this year in this budget item because of those bills not coming in on time on that particular one.
And that's
Also,
maintenance
it has-
contracts?
That's the maintenance
Okay.
contracts.
How does that tie to repair?
The repair under 260 line item was left in there for the simple fact, if you'll notice, we have, that's repairs to the building. That's also repairs for the generators. I have 3 generators, one at the north tower, the south tower, and then one at dispatch. We have a monitoring system on those generators, which you see we have a contract under the line item 262. However, if something happens to those generators, it has to come out of the repair bill, because we do not have a maintenance contract for the generators. So if our garage cannot fix it, which we had a big $20,000 already this year, that we had some plates that were burned inside the generator, the plates on the inside, that we had to replace in 2 different locations. So anything outside of the monitoring of the generator under the line item 262 has to come out of the repair out of the 260. And then I just deducted that particular one for the request of the budget cut from that line item this
So
year.
you're gonna take the requested budget cut out of repair?
That's the only place that I can,
Okay.
because if you'll notice, I don't know if you have a sheet, but I do have a sheet back from 2000, when I came back as the director. We're actually working on the same minimum budget line items, amounts, except for employment
From 16,
from 2010.
10.
Yes, ma'am, 2010. There was an increase in 2009, but I was not here then. There was an increase in 2009 that came up to the 2010. And then I have slowly increased certain line items, like the training. We had to increase the training because the state came down with regiment training that is mandatory for 911 dispatcher, and it has to be repeated every 2 years. Then also to the ISO for the fire department, there's training that the dispatchers have to do for that. So there's mandatory training rules and regulations that have changed throughout the years for the dispatchers, and I had to increase the training to cover that.
All right, any more questions?
Thank you.
None?
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and take a break for lunch. Harvey's hungry down there. And we'll come back at 1 o'clock. Did I give everyone enough time?